Good afternoon and welcome to Master the Art of Presenting webinar. My name is Timo Sorri. I am the founder of Havain Presentation Design Agency and also the main organizer of Master the Art of Presenting event, which will be held 20th and 21st of October this year in Helsinki, Scandic Hotel Park. Master the Art is a public speaking and presentation skills event in which you can get expert insight and also very practical workshops on the art of preparing, visualizing, and delivering effective presentations. And today we have a webinar with one of our keynote speakers, brain researcher Mona Moisala.
Hello.
Welcome, Mona.
Thank you.
And we also have one of our great event partners, Seidat, here featured, and Paulus Perkkiö from Seidat, who will be also delivering a workshop at the event. Will tell shortly about his presentation tool, Seidat, in this webinar. Welcome, Paulus.
Thank you.
And for all of you watching there, we also have a chat window next to our video window, and you can send in questions if you have for Mona or Paulus at the end of this webinar, and during the webinar we can also handle some of your questions in case you have some. But yes, so we'll start discussing with one of our keynote speakers, brain researcher Mona Moisala. Can you tell us, Mona, what you do in your day-to-day work?
Well, firstly, I'm a PhD student, so I'm in the final phases of finishing the PhD, and I'm specialized in cognitive neuroscience. So I'm interested in what happens in the brain when people are processing information. And my day-to-day work really depends on what stage of the study we're in. So I might be measuring subjects in the laboratory using fMRI, or I might be analyzing data, or right now I'm in the phase where I'm writing up a scientific article. So it really depends on the phase that we're in.
Okay. And why did you choose to start studying the human brain?
Well, I've always been interested in how the brain works. I remember my favorite topic in high school was neuropsychology. I thought it was really fascinating, and I read a lot of Oliver Sacks's books.
Mm-hmm.
He's a neurologist. He's written a lot of books about some of his patients, and I thought it was just really interesting how he described some of the patients who had, for example, a brain injury, and then they, had difficulty recognizing objects, and they would mistake their wives for hats and all sorts of very strange things. And I thought, what is this? And what does this reveal about how the brain normally works? So I've always been fascinated by the brain.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And well, you are featured in an event where we will be discussing the art of effective presentations. Do you need to give a lot of presentations in your work?
Yeah, I do actually, which is great because I get to speak to a lot of different types of audiences. So I might, teach some lectures at the university to pupils, and there you obviously have to really focus on the pedagogical side of things and motivating the students. But then I also speak at conferences to other researchers, and I guess they're the most rewarding ones because you can really get into the specifics of the research that normally bores people, but the scientific community are excited about it. But then I also speak outside of academia quite a lot, and that for me has been the biggest challenge because you really have to try to make the science understandable and relatable to people outside of the university, and that can be really challenging. But also, they're the best opportunities to kind of experiment a little bit with the performance because they're not so formal. Mm-hmm. So you can try different techniques of performing in those settings.
Mm-hmm. I remember when we first met that you maybe hadn't paid that much attention that the connection between the brain science and then effective presentations. So
Mm-hmm.
what was that like when we met and we started discussing like for the first time about brains and then like presentations?
Yeah, it was really interesting because I hadn't thought of that connection before, but then it made complete sense when we were talking about, for example, presentations that are crammed with a lot of information. And that's exactly what our subjects are actually doing in the laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we might be, forcing our subjects to multitask while we're measuring their brain activity. And this is actually what happens in a lot of presentations as well. So there was a lot of parallels between what I was studying and the work that you were doing. So I thought it was really a great opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah, yeah. We also got a lot of good feedback on your last year's keynote on presentations and the brain. Then I want to dive into some really like practical questions about presentations that can be also beneficial for the people watching this. So, what do you think is like an optimal length from brain research viewpoint? What is an optimal length for a presentation?
Well, we know from studies that if we have subjects in the lab and they're performing something quite monotonous, a little bit boring, but something quite simple and easy to do, at around 20 minutes, they start kind of nodding off and getting distracted and making more mistakes in a really simple task. So we know that people tend to become distracted at around 15-20 minutes, some say half an hour. So this is something that you can definitely take into consideration when giving a performance. So if it's more than 20 minutes, you might want to have breaks after around 20 minutes, have a proper break or have a discussion or do some exercises and kind of refresh the brain. Because in a way, our evolution has shaped our brain to be like a change detector. Our brain is not interested in what stays the same, but we're interested in change because change is a potential indicator of danger. So really, you want to keep things interesting and change it up every 20 minutes or so.
Okay. So 20 minutes, and then having like changing or breaking the pattern once in a while.
Exactly.
Do we have a question coming up? Or?
Not that.
Okay. Okay, then another like a very practical question about presentations and brain. So, how much information is too much for one presentation? Meaning, what is like is there like some kind of a rule of thumb for how much a brain can absorb information or for how long?
Yeah, well, the biggest problem with a lot of presentations is exactly that they're packed with too much information. We know from brain studies that people are most likely going to be able to absorb about 2 or 3 main points from the presentation. It's because our brain, we're not a perfect information processing machine. We can only take in a certain amount of information at a time, and this also applies to memory. So people are only going to remember a few of the key points that you make in your presentation. So really, the best idea is to weed out anything that's not really crucial and not relevant to those main points and narrow it down.
Is there any differences between people who are used to see presentations and who are not that used? Can you train you to understand more?
Well, there's definitely a difference if the audience are experts in the same field as you are. In that case, obviously, they're going to remember a lot more of the details because they already have some information in their brain about the topic. But if it's a completely sort of naive audience, then that's when you especially need to concentrate on narrowing the information down.
Yeah, and I remember this is one of these features of PowerPoint presentations are maybe the most usual type of presentation that people give in business, and the PowerPoint makes it so easy to write down bullet points, and then best of all, sometimes it even makes it so that it starts like making the font smaller so you can fit in more text. So that kind of seduces people to put in just more information per one slide, and we know that that's not the most effective way of doing presentations based on brain science.
We have some questions here.
Yeah.
Immersed. Aha, yes.
So the question is, So how do you then explain people being immersed in long theater plays or movies? So how can people absorb information for a long time in such a setting?
Yes, for sure. I mean, it's true that people can stay focused on a task for hours at a time if they're immersed enough. It can be a movie, or it can, even when you're working. For example, if you've ever done coding, you might know that you might get immersed into coding for hours and hours, even though it's fairly monotonous and fairly boring. But this is sort of a different state. It's a state of flow, which is often referred to as a state where you're kind of challenging yourself a little bit, but not too much. And that's why the task is so motivating and you're able to focus for such a long time. But it's not a very common situation when you're listening to a presentation that you are immersed into this state of flow. So it's more uncommon for this to happen. But of course, people are able to concentrate for longer periods of time if they're super interested and motivated.
Yeah, and I guess that super presenters also can make it so that it actually becomes like really easy to absorb.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, then one more question related to these very practical topics. So based on, once again, your scientific background and then your knowledge about it, but what makes an effective presentation graphic?
Well, if we're thinking about graphics that are related to, for example, presenting some data, so if you're showing some bar graphs or line graphs or whatever, again, the principle of weeding out anything unimportant is really important. If we think of the human visual system, there's actually 10 million bits of information coming in through the eyes every second into the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
this is why we've developed an ability to focus on just small portions of the visual field at a time, because otherwise our brain would be overwhelmed with all of the information. So people are only going to be focusing on small bits of the graph anyway, so you might want to highlight and help them direct their attention to what is really relevant in the graph. But if we talk about images in general, using images in presentations, I would encourage using emotional images and images with other people, because we tend to fixate or look more at pictures of other people. We're interested in other people.
Mm-hmm.
And emotional images are great because we know that the brain activates different areas when we're in an emotional state. And this makes for better learning. So if we're in an emotional state, we're more likely to remember what is being said.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to use that to your advantage in a presentation.
Mm-hmm. So images of people, emotional images,
Mm-hmm.
and then visualizing data. That's okay then. Yeah, thanks. By the way, Paulus, for switching the scene for us, and sorry for the watchers of this. We forgot to switch to the big screen view, but from now on we will have everyone visible here. Oh, so there's a question.
Comment.
Okay, what about emotional takeaways? Are there some limits for those as well? So is there like a limit how much emotion you can include in it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, emotion is still information. Like, there's no real distinction there, but you can sort of use emotion to make those memory traces that are formed even stronger. So the point is still to keep sort of the main points only to a few, but also to incorporate maybe some emotional content to, make those memories even stronger in the audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess the three pillars that come from the ancient Greek already, the ethos, so you need to have like the credibility, then the logos, you need to have like logical argument, and then the pathos, meaning the emotional component to the message. So you need to have a balance between the three. But I guess that in many times, especially in business presentations, the emotional component, the pathos it's missing. Yeah. Then, do you have yourself a favorite speech or presentation that you especially remember well?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I mean, there's dozens of like really great TED Talks, for example, by really professional people and so forth. But actually, when I thought about this question, one particular speech came to mind which was by this anthropologist Jeremy Narby. He spoke at this event called Pioneers Conference about intelligence in nature, if you want to Google it. It's really funny because in a way his performance breaks all the rules that we normally associate with a good performer. He seems very shy, he speaks in a low tone of voice, he doesn't do a lot of intonation, but it's actually, he uses that quirkiness to his benefit, and it's a really mesmerizing and memorable talk. So that stood up to me when you asked this question.
Okay. The name was?
Jeremy Narby, Intelligence in Nature.
Jeremy Narby, Intelligence in Nature. Okay. And then just looking a bit at the upcoming event in October, you will be there speaking this time about brains and then also like presentation anxiety. So what can you tell us about your upcoming keynote?
Right, so I think the topic was inspiring with confidence.
Inspiring with confidence, yeah, true.
That was a very positive way to formulate this.
True, yeah.
Yeah, but the truth is that we don't always feel very confident when we're performing. So the majority of Finnish people, for them, the greatest cause of anxiety is the idea of public speaking. So it's a really, really common issue to have stage fright, and I've suffered it from it myself. I freely admit to that. But there's a lot of techniques that you can use to alleviate some of that anxiety, maybe, and boost your confidence. So I'll be talking about those. I want to cover some more simple techniques that the audience can take with them and use, if they're having a presentation the next day. And they mostly have to do with the kind of the brain-body connection. So we're obviously, the way that we feel and what we think affects the body, but obviously it's a reciprocal connection. So there's information coming in from the body affecting the way that we feel. So what often happens when people are performing, for example, is their heart rate starts to go up, and then they start thinking about the heart rate, like, oh my goodness, I'm getting nervous and people are going to notice, and that in turn increases the heart rate again. So there's this vicious cycle that goes on, and there are ways to intersect those cycles. For example, just focusing on a particular part of the body or focusing on the breath. They're really, really useful techniques, and I found them really great. But I also want to talk about sort of more long-term things that people can do. One of them is to try to personally really be curious about what it is that you're afraid of when you're afraid of performing. What's really causing the anxiety? And this is a really personal issue, and this is not going to be resolved in one seminar together, but I want to encourage people to sort of explore this issue, and because when we understand what causes anxiety, that also helps to relieve the anxiety itself.
Okay. So, inspiring with confidence.
Yes.
It would be interesting.
It'll be, yeah. Okay, I guess that wraps up everything with Mona. Thank you for coming to this webinar. Glad to have you speaking at the event in October. Do we have
yeah.
Okay, there was asking for the link to the TED Talk. Maybe we can post it over there.
Yeah, I can post the link. Yeah.
Okay. And now we're actually moving on, hearing from one of our great event partners, Seidat and Paulus. Paulus will quickly walk us through on Seidat presentation solution. I welcome. Just quickly switch the scene so that Paulus can start presenting. Just a second. And I have yes, there. So, should we switch places if you want?
No, it's okay to sit here. I think so.
Okay, yeah. So, Paulus, welcome.
Thank you, Timo. And I'm Paulus Perkkiö. I'm coming from Seidat. Seidat is a presentation company. We are making better presentations mainly for sales use. And Seidat is a tool we are using for presentations, and it's an interactive and intelligent tool, web-based, and it can help people to make maybe a little bit different kind of presentations than previously.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing I think is not only how to make presentations, but how to manage them and that kind of things. And we have studied quite much that kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. There are some technical issues in
Just we'll figure it out. Now let's go back. Okay,
yes.
it's working now.
Actually, I got quite often questions what means say that, and I'm coming from Sami culture, and to say that they are one kind of sacrificial places of Sami people. They are telling quite much stories about those places, and they are very important for that kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
And all the time when we are discussing with companies, we are discussing also what are the setup of their business,
Mm-hmm.
what are the most important things they are selling, and what kind of stories they are telling.
Let's switch it.
Yes, we still have some.
Well, let's switch it this way then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right that way. Yeah. Okay. What is to say that as a presentation tool? It's we are aiming only for business users, and with our tool you can create presentations, edit them, of course present presentations, and what is the quite often very important is sharing presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I can share presentations many ways with say that.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done by at the moment online, and then I can send you a link by email and so on. It's very, I think that current other systems are not so good in sharing, which is very important after having a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some special features of our system. It's very important that you can have only one presentation system and use it for face-to-face meetings. You can use it in trade shows, in big major events, online presentations, and so on. Only one presentation system. You create presentation once and then share, present, and edit it in one system.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can also use our slide matrix to navigate easily, and that's very important feature in many sales situations. When you go to your customer, it's quite often the situation that you have thought how to go on, but situation will change.
Mm-hmm. So you need to adapt your speech to the situation. Yeah. And with this, you can also adapt like the presentation to how the discussion flows.
Yes.
Oh.
Then this sharing options, it's very important, and it means for salespeople less traveling, and the traveling is quite expensive. It takes a lot of time, and it one kind of waste of time.
So you can just you can give a presentation if like the audience only has an internet connection and a browser.
Yeah.
So you can give a presentation. You don't need to travel anywhere. You can
Yeah.
do it, maybe call them and then just give you a presentation. They watch their own screen and see what you're showing.
Yes.
Okay.
And it has happened for me quite often that I'm calling to our customers, and then during the phone call I should present something, and I can use my telephone to give that presentation, and it's quite a cool feature.
Oh.
Yes, and then I will come also to that Master of Art.
Yeah, people can learn more about this.
Yeah,
We will dive deeper.
My aim is to have a discussion about what kind of presentations are the best ones. I think that the best presentation is like a fireplace, and there are many people sitting around the campfire, and you have a good discussion, and if the presentation is like campfire, it can be, I think, it's one of the best ways to have presentations.
Yeah, and with this you can adapt your like campfire story according to what kicks in and what doesn't. Yeah. Thank you, Paulus, and Paulus will also give a deeper workshop on the art of doing presentations with Seidat at the event. Let's quickly just switch the scene once again. So, can I get everyone? Yes. So thank you, Mona.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paulus, for being here. Just want to, are there some questions?
Yes, there is a question. You can try Seidat free.
So can you try Seidat? Yes, you can get free trial of Seidat at seidat.com. Yeah. Okay. And thanks for everyone watching this webinar. For those of you who maybe had enrolled but couldn't come, we will send the recording afterwards. We have next Master the Art of webinar coming up. It'll be 15th of September with Microsoft. And of course, we have the event coming up on the 20th and 21st of October. And until the end of June, we have an early bird price still. So if you go and enroll to the event now during the month of June, you will save €75 per your entry. So go on and do that at www.master/presenting.com. So masterpresenting.com. Thanks for being here in the webinar, and I hope to see you at the event. And as said, we will send the link to the recording afterwards. But for now, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.